Hi and welcome back to another skills video, and in this video we're going to be looking at the skill of self-reflection and self-evaluation. So two really important skills. I've bunched them together and we're going to talk about them, and we're going to talk about the relevance of how this can help you on the Part 3 exam or a standards check. So to help us just understand that, let's just have a look at the ADI 1, the examiner's guidance for marking a Part 3, just to put this into context. And where does reflection, self-reflection, come into the Part 3 marking sheet? So let's just not that one. Okay, so I've just if you've watched a few of these now, you'll know that you can just type in DT1 in your search engine and you will come up with this, the guidance for carrying out driving instructor tests and checks. If we just hop down to the Part 3 section, so just going to click on that, and it's competency 17 we're looking at. So got to scroll all the way down. Oh yeah, I know. So yeah, let's just briefly look at the marking sheet as I go past that. So we're actually dealing with competency 17, which falls in the teaching and learning strategies. And if I just zoom this up a little bit, it's not very clear on this one. At the end of the session, was the pupil encouraged to reflect on their own performance? So there's 3 points available if you do this well. And we're just going to scroll down and find. Right, here we go. Well, let's zoom up on that. So it took me a while to get there, but here it is. Okay, so this one here, as I've just said, at the end of the session, was the pupil encouraged to reflect on their own performance? So this is what the ADI 1 states. At the end of the session, the pupil should be encouraged to reflect on their own performance and discuss their feelings with the PDI or ADI if this is a standards check. The PDI should encourage honest self-appraisal and use client-centered techniques, we'll talk about those in a little while, to highlight areas that need development if the pupil has not recognised them. That's quite important. So let's just read that one again. So using client-centered techniques, which I said I'll come back to highlight areas that need development if the pupil has not recognised them. So if during the lesson, your 1 hour lesson, your test lesson, or 45 minutes if it's during the COVID, if certain things have been happening, let's say that the main theme of your lesson was to do, I don't know, roundabouts, but your pupil has a habit of following too closely, and when they stop behind traffic, they're also too close. So following distance is an issue. We should be encouraging our pupils to talk about that because that's a clear need and they need to reflect on it. So when you're reflecting, it needs to be relevant to what just happened on the session. Okay. So yeah, so highlight areas that need development if the pupil has not recognised them. So you've got to encourage, steer them to talk about these things to make it relevant. Once development areas have been identified, the pupil should be encouraged to make them part of future development. So we take something that happened today and we're going to build on it. So yeah, so that's the context. Now, with all the other competencies apart from one other, where we've normally become accustomed to looking at indicators of good competency and indicators of a lack of competency. This particular competency hasn't listed those. So we're going to explore and get into that in more detail. So when you're teaching your learners, now normally when you take a pupil to your Part 3, you're in the middle of their learning journey, aren't you? You've taught them before, you've taught them just now on this lesson, and you're going to teach them next week. It'd be quite rare to take someone that you've never met to a Part 3 and never going to see them again. So this fits the scenario that would fit most people, that this is just 1 hour of their 40-hour learning journey. So we want to be encouraging pupils to reflect on their own performance, and I've highlighted encouraging because We're not forcing them to speak. Some pupils might find it hard to open up, but we're being marked on our ability to encourage to get them talking about them and not kind of force them into a situation they don't want to be. So at the start of the lesson, before your test, you would have been telling the examiner where you are now with this pupil. So, this, like the past. This is what happened last lesson, last week. These are the good things about my pupil. These are their areas of development that they need work on. Then, of course, we do the lesson, and at the end, we reflect. So where are we now? At the end of that lesson, where are we now? We want to be talking about that. And most importantly, as it said in the guidance there, where are we going to take that? How are we going to take where we are now and build on that for the next lesson? So there's this kind of joined up approach in our lessons. So the examiner is going to decide whether you become an instructor based on 1 hour or 45 minutes during COVID on your ability in that one lesson that they see that you can take a pupil from here, process them, add some value, teach them something, learning takes place, and where it's going to go to in the future. That's what they want to see, that sort of beginning, the middle, and the end. And of course, you're encouraging your pupils to reflect on the performance, not just at the end of the lesson, but during the lesson. So as they've just done that roundabout, or they've just done that emergency stop, before we do the next emergency stop, let's just think about, well, what happened there? What do we need to improve on? And what are we going to do? How are we going to make it better next time? So that learning is taking place throughout. And of course, at the end of the lesson, you just conclude it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that now. So what is it? What is self-reflection, self-evaluation? Well, and also, why do we do it? So if you think what it is, it's a skill for life, and we're encouraging lifelong learning. So you'll have 40, 50 hours, maybe even 30 hours with a pupil. Every pupil will be different in their learning journey. And once they've passed, they leave you and now they're on their own. And you want to give them the skills to be able to self-evaluate and assess situations rather than throw their hands up in the air and blame everyone else. It's always everybody else. It's their fault. That is not what we're encouraging here. We want them to think about what just happens, what they could do, how they could have dealt with that differently. Is there anything they could have done differently to prevent that, to deal with it better, and learn from it so that next time they're in that situation that they have a better experience, a safer experience. So this is definitely a skill for life, encouraging your pupils to give them that skill to self-evaluate, and not just in driving, but this will be a good skill for life in general, isn't it? When they've done a bad deal at work or something, they think, do you know what? If I could do that differently, I would do. And then they learned, and they go and do that differently next time, and hopefully get better at their job or whatever it is that they're doing. So definitely a skill for life. As we said, we're encouraging our pupils to self-analyse. It comes from them. They're not just blaming everybody else. They're thinking, well, what part did they play in it? What could they have done differently in that situation? Rather than pointing the finger, blaming other people. So taking responsibility for their learning. We are encouraging our learners to take responsibility for their learning journey. Yeah, they're paying us to train them, and there will be pupils that have the view, well, how should I know what I want? How should I know what I need? You're the instructor, you tell me. Yeah, there will be people like that, but we are encouraging them to take ownership of their learning, because if they're part of it and part of the solution, they're more likely to buy into it and do it because it's come from inside of them rather than being told. People generally don't like being told what to do, but if it's their idea, then they're more likely to do it, and more likely to do it well. So encouraging your pupils to take responsibility for their learning. We're encouraging our pupils to think, critical thinking of what the problem solving. So all this interlinking. So if there's a problem that just something didn't go quite well and the people thinks, and we encourage them to talk about it, how they feel, what the situation was, maybe draw it and analyse it on a picture, and think, oh yeah, do you know what, if I'd done that, that probably wouldn't have happened and I could have done this. And so they solve the problem themselves, and then learning will take place rather than you just say to them, oh, you should have done that because of so-and-so. Yeah, they might forget that, but if it's come from them and you take a little bit of time to get them thinking, problem solving, then learning is going to be longer lasting. And it's a skill, like I say, a skill for life that they will develop to be critical thinkers. It's client-centered doing it this way. It's relevant to them, and it's from the learner. It comes from them rather than an instructor-led, this is what's going to happen, I'm telling you, I'm the instructor. Well, we want to be more client-centered and encourage our pupils to think and solve problems, as we said. So that hopefully kind of looks at this skill of reflection and gives you a better understanding of why we're doing it and what it is. Okay, so we said we'd come back to some of the techniques that you could use. Well, a couple spring to mind. You could use mind mapping or scaling as techniques to help your pupils problem solve, to think, be creative thinkers. So let's say if you, I don't know, let's say you've got a pupil that's a bit anxious about going onto the dual carriageway for the first time. So you might encourage them to think of the problems that they might face when they join on the slip road. So you could mind map it. You could sort of say problems entering the dual carriageway. And they might think, well, there might not be a gap. Okay, so what if there wasn't a gap? So you could draw a little bubble, no gap. What if there was no gap? What other options have you got? So it's kind of like a brainstorming where you can just put little bubbles in and do it with them. Give the pen and the paper to the pupil, get them to draw it. But you're facilitating and help them think about these problems and more importantly, encourage them to think how they could solve it. Well, what if that happens? What we could do? Well, write it down. Write that down. So if that happens, you could do this. So it just gets their ideas and their concerns out, and then they might look at that and be more better to think, well, yeah, I can solve this problem. So mind mapping, to be fair, to be honest, I don't really use it that much as an instructor. I did have a little look on YouTube to see if there's anything on it. Just I mean, obviously you can find it in, just look on the internet. But one thing I found on YouTube, I just popped that out there briefly, that was this instructor, use of mind maps to explain junctions to turn left. So I'm not gonna play it all through, but I'm just gonna give you a little.
Okay, what else did you say? Road sign,
sample. So you can see he's put on the screen there.
I suppose just to
left turn signs, and if I just fast forward through that, you can see it grows. So they're talking about the sort of things that might come up, and it's very client-centered. This is what the pupil has said to the instructor, and they're writing it down. So it grows and grows. You get the idea. Okay. Okay, so that's that. So if you're interested in that, just go on YouTube. Use of mind maps to explain junctions to turn left, and you will find that. Okay, so so that's one tool you could use, mind mapping, to sort of help your pupil to be a critical thinker, to solve problems, and scaling. So this is quite a widely used tool that instructors use to scale things. So like it kind of goes back to this, is like, where are we now? How confident do you feel at joining dual carriageways on a slip road? Well, about a 3. Where would you want to be by the end of this session? Well, maybe a 4 or 5. Just to scale it, to sort of give it some kind of measure, make it measurable. So yeah, scaling is a tool you could use. If you're using scaling at the start of your lesson, then make sure at the end of the session that you tie that up, that you ask the people at the end, where would they rate their confidence at joining slip roads now at the end of that session, because otherwise it was just a pointless exercise. So just make sure that if you're scaling at the start, you remember at the end of the session to conclude that scaling and see how so the pupil can evaluate their own performance, and did they move forwards? Did they move closer towards their goal? Okay, so that's really important. And I've just put in there that they're optional tools. You don't have to use this if you don't scale at the end of your part 3, or you've not used a mind map. That doesn't mean you're not going to get a 3 in that section. It's your ability to encourage your pupil to self-reflect and self-evaluate throughout the whole lesson and at the end. And these are just tools that you may or may not use at your discretion. Okay, if you are using scaling, be realistic with it. Don't do a lesson with a beginner on roundabouts and say they're a 10 at the end. The examiners won't agree with you. They're not a 10. You're overinflating that. It's got to be realistic. So just be careful that you don't fall into that little trap. Okay. When do you do the self-reflection? It does say on the marking sheet at the end of the session. So yes, it would clearly be done at the end. But if you've got a capable driver, maybe a full license holder or someone near test standard that can actually think and drive at the same time, then you could start that process on the way back to the test centre and sort of asking questions. So yeah, what would you take away from this lesson? How did you feel with those roundabouts or the slip roads as the example I've been using? How confident do you feel now? What would you think you need to do in the future? You could start asking some questions and sort of getting inside their head, but don't distract them. If it ever becomes distracting, stop that line of questioning and say, don't worry, just concentrate on this. We'll talk about it when we get back to the test centre. That is fine, because that shows your awareness that the pupil is struggling and that you've adapted straight away when you realise that you're talking too much. So what will the pupil take away from today? This is a question that I would always ask at the end of a session. So yeah, because we've had our beginning bit where we set our goals, we've done the development drive and we've been talking throughout it. But now what would we take away? What would our pupil take away from this lesson? Because at this point they're about to pay you, aren't they? Is it value for money? You know, if they're paying, what is it, £28 an hour for a driving lesson for a manual, or higher, it depends where you live. Would you pay for that? What are they taking away? What have they learned? Has learning taken place? Remember, a driving lesson isn't just a practice drive where you give directions and aimlessly drive around with nothing really happening. We really want to achieve something, and we want to make sure our pupil has got that feeling that, do you know what? I am better at that now. I genuinely feel that I've taken that away and I've learned something. Now, this could be things that weren't in the plan. Things could happen during the course of your lesson, and like a fault as an opportunity to learn, and something new comes into it and they take that away. That could be the big thing that wasn't planned in the lesson. They think, do you know what? I really learned about my following distance. I didn't realise that when it rained I had to have a 4-second gap, and that was a big thing for me because what I thought was safe just isn't. And so that was the big moment, the penny drop today on that one. And that might not have ever have been in the plan of today's lesson. So like I say, when you're self-reflecting at the end, make sure it's relevant to what just happened. And this is why you've got to encourage your pupil to think about these things. This is so key to get your 3 points in here. That's what you've got to do. Don't rush it. Often PDIs are thinking about the clock, thinking, oh my God, will I have time? And maybe get back a little bit later than they thought because they hit some traffic or there was a thing they just had to do again. And they rush through it and they just talk at the pupil and don't get the pupil or encourage the pupil to self-reflect. So they just talk at them and say, well, you did this and that was good and blah, blah, blah. And that's the end of the lesson. See you later. And and we'll do this next week. And just run through it really quickly. Don't do that. Don't rush it. Take the time. You're going to get points for this as showing good competency if you are doing what it says, and that is encouraging your people to talk about the problems, how they're going to overcome them, what they're going to do next time to get better at it. So I would allow 3 to 4 minutes at the end of the session to do this. If you run over 2 or 3 minutes at the end, I don't think the examiner's going to have a big problem with that. You're trying to get it on time, but if it just meant you just ask those questions at the end and open your pupil up and get them talking, then that's what you want to do. Don't rush it, because you're going to lose your points in there, and you need all the, well, you might not need all the points. You might be able to be so good that you don't need these extra couple of points at the end. But this could be the difference between a pass or fail. So it's a nice one just to think, right, make the time, do a good job on it, and get those points. Okay. Talk less, listen more. So like I said, don't just talk at your pupil, fill in the gaps, like trying to chivvy them on through this bit. Encourage them to talk and listen. Let them listen. Let's hear how they feel. Let's hear how they're going to solve that problem, what they're going to do differently in that situation next time. What have they learned from that experience? Like, have we got that light bulb moment where they think, yeah, I got it. Today, I got it. If you get that on your part 3, then, great. You're on the right track if you get that light bulb moment. And often your pupils won't think or remember that, so you've got to be encouraging them to talk about that light bulb moment and when that they got it and why it's so important. So do that. And also, finally, on taking your reflective log. So let's just go back to the marking sheet. Let's just whiz back here. Let's go up here a minute. There it is. That. Okay, so at the top of the part 3 marking sheet, you'll probably be aware that it says logbook, yes or no. What is this logbook? This is your logbook. This is your reflective logbook. So people that have joined me, that I'm training, will have a reflective logbook. So I give them a copy of this. So yeah, reflective learning logbook. What all it does is it logs their hours that they've done. And so there's like the 40 that they get included with the course. There's the private practice, so anything they've done privately, going out, teaching their niece or whatever, and any additional training hours above and beyond the 40 that were in the course. And then the reflective log. So it's just a book of reflective logs. So after each session, I encourage my PDIs to go away and reflect on what just happened. So what went well today, what didn't go so well today, and what could they do to improve. And then they just make some notes, scribbles of things. And then when we meet them next session, we will go through and build. So we're joined up thinking. And so we can take how the PDI felt and sort of get an insight into their learning journey, things they're struggling with, things they're frustrated with, things they wish they could do better, and then we can work those into the goals for the next session, work on those, and then of course when we get to the end of that session we'll spend about 5 minutes just reflecting on the session, and then I will say to them, go away, fill this out. Yeah, 'cause some things might come to them the next day or when they get home after a drive back. They don't always come to them in that session. Now, obviously, I will be encouraging them to do that during the session and get them to think about some key things, and then they can go away and take some time and just think about what just happened and what they need to do in their learning journey to become a driving instructor, and bring it to me next session. So we get this joined up, and ownership of learning goes to you, the PDI, because you steer this, guide it, be in control of it, own it, so you can take that to your part 3 test. You won't fail if you don't have it, but if you've got it, the examiner will look at it and leave it on the back seat. He'll have a flick through, and from my experience, examiners are quite interested in this. They do flick through, and they can kind of see the things you've been battling with and overcoming and how you've done it, and yeah, it gives a little bit of an insight. And this is something that you don't just want to do for your Part 3 test. This is something you'll do as an ADI. As an ADI, I keep a reflective log, so when I do my standards check or audit inspections, I will take my reflective log and show the examiner. But I'll bring it to life. I'll tell him like the things that I struggle with at the moment are this, and that I've been working on that and had a bit of a breakthrough with that. Or I've done this CPD, I went on a course and spent some time doing that. So yeah, just throughout your career as a driving instructor, keep reflecting, keep self-evaluating, and think, how can you get better every day? If you could just get better at one thing every day or every week, then you're unstoppable. So just keep improving. Once you become an instructor, it's not finished. Keep getting better, because you've got your standards check coming up in a year, and the examiner's going to expect to see an improvement. He wants you to be a grade A, and there's no reason why you can't if you keep at it, keep learning, keep reflecting. And I think that's really about it for this video. So thanks for watching another skills video, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks a lot.